Hello, everyone. I hope you're able to see our webinar slides and everything's working okay. If you have any issues, please drop a message in the chat. But hello, welcome to our October webinar series. This is titled our 2021 Electric Bicycle Legislation Update, Access, Incentives, and Inspiration. We are happy to have you all here today. Before we get started, I would just like to give a big thank you to our members. Thank you for being a member. If you're on the call today, we appreciate you. And if you're not a member, please send us an email and we'd be happy to give you some more information. So for our speakers today, I'd like to introduce Dr. Ash Lovell, our Electric Bicycle Policy and Campaign Director, and Noah Banian, our Director of Federal Affairs. So now I would like to pass it over to Ash.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to do a quick overview of our agenda, and then we will dive right into all of the great information and data and exciting updates we have around electric bicycles. So to start, I just want to say People4Bikes is all in on electric bicycles. This is a really exciting piece of the bicycle industry, and I am very honored to help kind of lead this work. We'll overview kind of what we're seeing in terms of the industry, what some of the big trends are, and we'll talk about how 36 states now have model electric bicycle legislation. Big wins there. We'll also talk a little bit about inspiration from new bicycle incentive programs, so e-bike incentive purchase programs. And then I will pass the mic over to Noah, and she will share the latest on what's happening with the EBike Act and the Bicycle Commuter Act. And we can talk about how you can take action. And then we'll open this up for a question and answer session where we will answer any questions you have for us. So thank you again so much for joining us. And let's dive right in. Ashley, the next slide, please. Awesome. So as I said, People4Bikes is all in on electric bicycles. So according to NPD group data, the 2020 electric bicycle retail market in the United States was estimated to be 547 million, more than double the 2019 market. Industry analysts estimate that more than 12 million electric bikes will be sold in the United States between 2020 and 2030. Over the coming months and years, we will continue working with our industry committee leaders and brands to accelerate all things electric bicycles. Looking ahead, People4Bikes sees electric bicycles playing a key role in helping solve many of the issues facing America today. We stand firm in the belief that electric bikes can help improve our health, connect communities, boost the economy, and protect the planet. We understand that electric bikes can be a solution for individuals, communities, and our nation, and frequently share the benefits of electric bicycles with elected officials when they are making decisions related to climate, mobility, and equity. For example, related to climate change, one of the biggest ways we can help fight climate change is by getting people out of cars and onto bicycles. The largest source of US greenhouse gas emissions is transportation at 29%. More than half of these transportation-related greenhouse gas emissions come from passenger vehicles. On top of that, Americans take an average of 2 car trips every day. This adds up to about 1.1 billion car trips every day. If we can translate even a fraction of these car trips into bike trips instead, we can make a significant difference in the greenhouse gas emissions produced by the transportation sector. On the freight side, commercial electric cargo bicycles could have a huge impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions and traffic congestion in major metropolitan areas. We're already seeing pilots in New York City around commercial electric cargo bicycles and a few other cities, and the data coming from these pilots is really encouraging. People4Bikes is currently working on a white paper for commercial electric cargo bicycles to help municipalities, freight companies, and bike manufacturers understand best practices when it comes to introducing commercial electric cargo bicycles in urban areas. This white paper will be ready for the public in mid-year 2022. Next slide, please, Ashley. So let's talk about electric bicycle access. Electric bikes are regulated at the federal level for the purposes of product safety, manufacturing, and federal funding. And states actually regulate the use of electric bicycles on our streets and paths. So it's a big deal that we have 36 states that are regulating electric bicycles like bicycles. That's the point of our model bicycle e-bike legislation. The other states that have no electric bicycle definition may require licensing and registration for these e-bikes. So many of you know that there are 3 classes of electric bicycles, but just to give you a brief refresher, Class 1 electric bicycles are equipped with a motor that provides assistance only when the rider is pedaling, and that ceases to provide assistance when the electric bicycle reaches 20 miles per hour. Class 2 electric bicycles are equipped with a throttle actuated motor that ceases to provide assistance when the electric bicycle reaches 20 miles an hour. And Class 3 is equipped with a motor that provides assistance only when the rider is pedaling, and that ceases to provide assistance when the electric bicycle reaches 28 miles an hour. Why is this model legislation so important? There's a few reasons. First, electric bicycle laws are different in every state and can be confusing for riders, retailers, and suppliers. Clear and consistent e-bike rules decrease confusion around where to ride. When the rules are simple, more individuals are incentivized to ride. And without this model legislation, e-bikes are not given the same rights as bicycles. So as I said before, where the Model 3 class legislation is in place, electric bicycles are not subject to the registration, licensing, or insurance requirements that apply to motor vehicles. This means that low-speed electric bikes are regulated similarly to traditional bikes. The model legislation helps the public take advantage of the many benefits that electric bikes offer. So PeopleForBikes is making riding an electric bicycle easy and accessible for all by working to create clear rules on how and where people can ride electric bikes. We're planning out right now which states we'll be focusing on in 2022 to pass the Model 3 class legislation. And we're looking forward to a time when all 50 states have passed the legislation and clarified how and where people can ride their e-bikes. Thanks, Ashley. I think we're on to the next one. Yes. So we also have some exciting news to share at the state level about e-bike incentive programs. So there are 3 states right now that have electric bicycle incentive bills that have been signed into law. The first is California, the next is Colorado, and lastly, Vermont. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about why these incentive programs are so important. So our mission at PeopleForBikes is to get more people riding bikes more often. One great way to do this is to break down barriers to owning bikes of all kinds, but especially in this case, electric bicycles. We recognize that the average price of an electric bike in the US is around $2,000, which makes these bikes inaccessible for many Americans. With this in mind, PeopleForBikes has supported electric bike purchase incentive programs at the local, state, and federal levels. So incentive bills are currently making their way through legislatures in Massachusetts, New York, Oklahoma, and New Jersey. And as we have shown, California, Colorado, and Vermont have signed these bills into law. These incentive programs can take the form of incentives, rebates, point of sale coupons, and more. They've been designed to help transition away from cars, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and in some cases to help frontline workers gain access to electric bicycles. Whether they're geared to fight climate change or increase equitable access to e-bikes, we fully support electric bicycle incentive programs at all levels of government. To give you a little bit more context about what's happening in California, Colorado, and Vermont, I'll just dive in a little bit more into California. So in California, on July 2nd, a $10 million e-bike incentive program in next year's state budget was approved. This was funded as part of the state's campaign to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from vehicles, and the program will help thousands of Californians get access to e-bikes to replace car trips. Bikes eligible will include bikes designed for people with disabilities, utility bicycles for carrying equipment or passengers, including children, and folding bicycles. Now, CalBike is working with the California Air Resources Board to roll out a program to help Californians buy e-bikes as soon as July 2022. While there are many exciting state level incentive programs currently in place and more that are being explored, we are also closely watching what's happening at the federal level. And at this time, I would like to pass the mic over to Noah, who is our Federal Affairs Director.
Thanks, Ash and Ashley, and thanks everyone for being here today and joining us. I am stoked to be talking to you about everything that's happening for e-bikes at the federal level. It's a lot. It's a lot more than we've seen in previous years in Congresses and administrations. And I think that's honestly mainly due to the uptick in ridership and purchasing and visibility of the utility of these products in communities across the country. And so we have a lot of exciting news to share of what's moving at the federal level. I think most folks on the webinar are probably familiar with the EBike Act. If you've gotten any emails from PeopleForBikes in the last few months, getting close to a year, I'd hope you'd have at least heard of it, but we'll break it down a little bit. And the other policies listed here, the Bicycle Commuter Act, infrastructure charging credits, and actual infrastructure funding are huge pieces of this bigger e-bike policy puzzle that we're working on at the federal level in complement to all of the work happening at the state and local level by partners. And so I want to talk a little bit about the larger political landscape that these policies find themselves in and how we're working through the landscape to get them passed, signed into law, and make it easier for everyone to access, ride safely, and just enjoy the benefit of e-bikes. The EBike Act, as I think most of us know, is a bill that was introduced this year to create a tax credit for the purchase of electric bicycles. This is the first of its kind, the idea being electric vehicles get tax credits, or consumers are able to access tax credits for electric vehicles, and electric bicycles are in many ways an even more efficient and significantly less emissions producing product that you can use to get where you need to go across town or with cargo. So the EBike Act is really just revolutionary in the fact that it exists and it has had so much success in the past few months. Specifically, in September, the House Committee on Ways and Means, which is the tax policy committee in the US House of Representatives in Congress, approved a $7.4 billion investment towards the EBike Act. Again, this is just last month. This is one part of the broader reconciliation bill you may be hearing about, which is this sort of large semi-infrastructure, social safety net, lots of different tax policies bill that's being worked on right now. Again, this is just one committee in the House. Much more work needs to be done to turn this broader piece of legislation into law, but a $7.4 billion investment in the tax credit over 10 years is massive. If anyone has worked on bike policy at the federal level, you know 7.4 billion with a B is not a number that we generally get to work with. So just this initial investment proposal for a tax credit that looks like a 15% refundable consumer tax credit with some income level restrictions to focus the accessibility towards lower income Americans is really significant progress for all of the advocates working on this at every level of government. Also included in this portion of the Build Back Better Act, this broader reconciliation bill, is the Bicycle Commuter Act, which is I think goes hand in hand so well with the EBike Act. What it would do is reinstate commuter benefits for biking to work, pre-tax at $81 a month for employees to access, for helping finance their bike purchases, for getting a bike share membership, costs related to e-bikes or safe storage, parking, anything like that. And $81 a month, that's almost $1,000 a year. So that's a pretty significant commuter benefit for riding a bike to work. And with a really important part of the structure being, you would be able to use that benefit in tandem with parking and transit benefits. So you wouldn't, have to be choosing a bike every single day, although we would love that. We are humans and understand that that is not realistic for a lot of people. The idea behind this policy is that it's really flexible. And if when passed, the commuter benefit for biking to work would make it really easy to ride to transit and still be able to take advantage of both of those benefits for biking and transit, or just biking a few days a week instead of every day, because not everyone's even going into an office 5 days a week anymore either. So whatever your work situation, your commute situation, if you're using a bike for a significant portion of that, you would be able to access this benefit, and that's hugely significant. I think, especially in connection to the rise of e-bikes and the tax credit that's also being proposed. This other policy, the micromobility charging tax credit, it's a really long phrase, was included in the Build Back Better Act in this committee as well. This is something that we're really excited about because of what it offers for businesses that want to invest in charging infrastructure for electric micromobility like e-bikes. There's already a business tax credit. There are 30C tax credits, if you want to look up the tax code, for installing electric vehicle charging at your business or at your business property. And what this bill would do, the language is so that it would expand the tax credit to be allowed to be accessed for investments in infrastructure to charge e-bikes and things like that. This is really important as more and more workers are using e-bikes to get to work, or even, you could think about it through the lens of a delivery driver. Having access to charging while you're on the go can be really important. So this is a really significant investment as well, and we're hopeful we'll make it across the finish line. And the last bullet I have here and I wanted to chat a little bit about is just what this reconciliation bill, this Build Back Better Act, is also planning or could do for infrastructure. And there's this one bill, the reconciliation bill, and then there's an actual infrastructure bill. But both of these policy packages, they're separate, they're on different tracks. I will not get into the broader politics surrounding them and how likely we are to get a vote this week, because I certainly don't know. But what I can say is that both of these policy packages offer significant investments in the actual infrastructure, the bike lanes, the trails, the multi-use paths, the barriers, the lights, the sidewalks, everything that you need to actually have safe places to ride your e-bike or whatever type of bike that you're using. We know that that is mission critical to expanding the use of e-bikes and making them more accessible. Beyond just the financial side and the physical side is the safety aspect, and better, stronger, more protected and connected bike infrastructure, which is what I'm talking about here, is really laying the foundation for all of these other exciting policies in the incentive world. The biggest incentive, I think, really is having a safe place to ride. And then, of course, getting financial incentives expands the pool of people who can access those places to ride. So the reconciliation bill, as it looks right now, a lot could change, does include some new buckets of funding on the transportation side for infrastructure related to neighborhood access and equity. So bike infrastructure would be an eligible expense for projects that help connect communities, look at the ways that the transportation system has historically divided minority, low-income communities across the country. And we're looking at bike infrastructure as a tool for that rebuilding, and how do we make it safer, easier for folks to get around their community, their homes, their towns without a car. There's also a bucket specifically for community climate incentive grants. So of course, we're looking at bike infrastructure as a tool to lower carbon emissions, because again, we know that the more, if you build it, they will come, they will use it. So the more safe bike infrastructure people have to access, the more likely they're going to use their bikes for their daily trips. And like Ash mentioned earlier, and I don't think this is a an audience where we need to continue to be, I mean, I think everyone is in agreement here that bike infrastructure is a tool for lowering carbon emissions. And so this funding bucket within the reconciliation bill as it stands now would recognize that as well and allow bike infrastructure to be eligible. And in total, that's about another $7 billion for not just bike infrastructure, but bike infrastructure would be eligible for that kind of funding. And of course, there's this infrastructure package too that has a lot of important increases in funding for programs like the transportation alternatives that help build, most of the largest federal source of funding for bike infrastructure. Those are the specific policies happening at the federal level. And of course, I hope the first question in your head right now is, well, how do I help make these things happen? How do we get them signed into law? And thank you so much for asking. So of course, this tired old refrain of calling your representatives really helps. It matters right now. There is a lot of negotiation happening in many ways at the last minute. This week, the last minute keeps moving, so it's sort of hard to tell what is the last minute. Everything is the last minute in DC. So calling your representatives, saying who you are, if you work for a bike brand, if that's based in your district, telling them that and saying, I represent this brand or this shop or this advocacy group, and I really care about the EBike Act. I think it's super important that more Americans can financially access e-bikes, and I really hope that you're supporting it in the reconciliation bill. PeopleForBikes has all of the online forms to send quick, easy letters that you can customize as you like to your elected officials that we'll certainly share in the follow-up if you haven't taken advantage of those opportunities already. And if you sign up for our email list, you'll be alerted immediately when those opportunities come up. Specifically, looking at the Senate right now is really important. So calling your senator's office, I think, is the most critical right now, calling or sending a quick email or note and making sure that they have you on the record as a constituent who supports the EBike Act, the Bicycle Commuter Act, and just the elevation of bike policy in the reconciliation bill right now is a really critical message to be sending.
Great, thank you, Noah and Ash. That was wonderful. We have a number of questions here. Thank you, everybody, for asking these. And if you do have an additional question, please put it in the Q&A section of the chat here. Let's take a look. Is every state requiring manufacturing labels like New York is? How easy is a label to obtain from a past purchase? Ash, do you want to take that one? Or we can follow up in an email.
I think we might need to follow up in an email. This one has me slightly stumped. I'm not sure how easy it is to obtain a label for a past purchase, but I will explore this and we will send you a follow-up answer as in the follow-up to this webinar. Good question.
Thank you. Yes, I'll take a note of that. Here's another question. I believe this one's for Noah. Is there a general dollar amount being set aside for connected bike infrastructure in both of the federal bills we were talking about?
Yeah, so there's let me just start quickly with the infrastructure bill and then the reconciliation bill. In the infrastructure bill, there is, the exact number is escaping me, but that is a bill that would go to fund over the course of 5 years. And we're specifically looking at programs like transportation alternatives, the recreational trails program, and some others like congestion mitigation, CMAQ, that can be used for bike infrastructure, but for the most part, these are programs where bike infrastructure is an eligible expense. When you say the words connected bike infrastructure, you might be thinking about the connectivity grant program, which is something that PeopleForBikes has been highly supportive of with our partners here in DC and across the country. This is a program to create a competitive grant program for projects that specifically add connections to existing pieces of bike infrastructure. So we're looking at building broader networks. Unfortunately, while this program was included in title in the transportation bill within infrastructure, it was not actually granted any specific dollar amount from that bill. The politics behind that is that they've left the funding question up to the annual appropriations process. We would like to see $500 million a year going to that program. That was the initial ask, but unfortunately, that $500 million wasn't specifically included in the infrastructure bill. But there is, in the low billions, I think a couple, maybe $5 to $8 billion total in the infrastructure bill for programs where bike infrastructure is eligible. Now, quickly in the reconciliation package, on the infrastructure side of reconciliation, there's a climate program and a neighborhood access and equity program. And in total, they equal $7 billion. And I know that one is $3 billion and one is $4 billion, but I apologize, I'm not exactly remembering which is which. But in total, there's another $7 billion proposed on the House version of the reconciliation bill for buckets where bike infrastructure is an eligible expense. That's a pretty long-winded answer saying there is billions out there. It's hard to quantify the exact amount right now, just given how up in the air a few things are.
Thank you, Noah. We have one more federal question here that I'm seeing. It is, how will the Bicycle Commuter Act benefit be distributed and how will eligibility be determined?
This is such a great question. The distribution, it will be through employers because this falls under the fringe transportation benefits. So the way that you get a parking or transit benefit from your employer that's pre-tax will be the same way that you access this bike commuter benefit. Some of the specifics, like the actual paperwork that will need to be filled out for it, definitely still need to be determined by the IRS, but that can only happen after the bill is passed. Another thing that will have to be determined legally by the IRS is how much biking per month constitutes eligibility for the benefit. The language in the bill as written is slightly vague, and that's on purpose to allow for flexibility. But of course, there does have to be some type of cutoff point. And that's just to make the administration easier and to avoid, fraud and people taking advantage of the program who just maybe aren't biking to work. So that's a question that does need to be answered. I don't have a clear answer for it now, but ideally it's not, 28 days of the month you have to be biking to work to access the benefit, because that can be really unrealistic for a lot of people who are biking less days than that. I think the actual amount will be significantly less, but it's sort of a TBD right now.
Great, thank you, Noah. Ashley, I have a question here about e-bike safety. Will there be training available for new or returning riders in regards to e-bike safety? And I'm sure we can do an umbrella there for general bike safety as well. Did you want to take a stab at that?
Sure. The short answer, yes. This is an issue that is very important to the industry and to PeopleForBikes. We have a electric bicycle safety task force that's been working on a variety of different initiatives. We actually are launching our latest video on rider etiquette for both traditional and e-bike riders in November at the Electric Bicycle Summit on November 19th. And we will be distributing that resource to all of our connections and retailers and others to kind of help get that training out there. This is a big issue, and it's something that PeopleForBikes is working with a lot of our industry members on. And we're looking at building out. We have a pretty good toolkit already of different resources for rider etiquette and safety, and this is something we will be building significantly in 2022. Good question.
Great, and it looks like we have about a minute left here. Any concluding thoughts, Ash, Noah, from today, or anything else you want to share with our attendees?
Sure, maybe I'll go first quickly, Noah. There is a question from Fred about, is People4Bikes considering outreach related to safe battery storage and charging practices to protect from potential fires? Yes, Fred, we are actually about to launch an e-bike battery recycling program. So next week, we will be talking more about this initiative, and we're really excited to be able to take kind of proactive action, both for the kind of sustainability components of lithium battery recycling and the safety components. So great question. Thanks for teeing me up for that little snippet. Noah, you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, I'll just say, we so appreciate industry members speaking up, reaching out to their elected officials. Now is really, truly such a critical time to be doing that. So please do make those phone calls, send those emails, fill out the form letters that we'll share, because everyone in Congress has heard from me about it, and they need to be hearing from folks in their districts and their states who are contributing to their communities by making it easier to bike through your businesses. So please help me out and help yourself out by doing some of that outreach to Congress, and just continuing to elevate the profile of bicycles and e-bikes as legitimate tools for getting around, for getting healthy, staying active. Business solutions, climate solutions, all of those perspectives are really so valid and important to hear right now in DC.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ash and Noah. And as Ash mentioned just a moment ago, we do have our upcoming virtual bicycle leadership conference. It's happening next week, the 2nd through the 3rd of November. It's going to be a really wonderful conference, and you all are welcome to join. It will, like I said, be taking place virtually through a remote platform. And that's a really wonderful interactive platform where you can network and hear from really great speakers, such as the speakers today. So that is happening. And then we also have our Electric Bicycle Summit happening in person in Tucson, Arizona on November 19th. Please also join us for that. We'll be talking about all things e-bike yet again, and getting to network again with our fellow industry members. So thank you again for being with us today, listening in. We'll follow up with a recording from today's webinar. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email Ash or Noah, whose emails are on the screen. So thank you again.